My guest, however, is not Slash. My guest is Charl Van Wyk. Now, some of you may not be old enough to remember this, but back on July 25th, 1993, terrorists burst in to the St. James Cathedral in Kenilworth, South Africa, and opened fire with automatic weapons and with grenades. When the smoke cleared, 11 people were dead, 58 people were injured. One person in that church was carrying a gun. One parishioner had a gun, his name Charl Van Wyk. And he took his, I believe it was a .38 snub-nose revolver, and he fired back and chased them out the door. And they took off running. He actually was able to shoot one of the terrorists, and they retreated. He was the only person carrying a gun into a house of worship, which, of course, many people would suggest ought to be gun-free zones. Well, Charl Van Wyk says no, they should not be gun-free zones, because you have not only the right, but the responsibility to arm yourself and protect yourself. Charl Van Wyk is the author of a new book. It's called Shooting Back, The Right and Duty of Self-Defense. Charl, we welcome you to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Gary, great to be with you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So in reading your book, which, by the way, is a very fast and easy and exciting read on many levels, I was very surprised to see that you actually, in your mind, prepared yourself for the eventuality. Now, we know that South Africa, back in that day and age, and maybe today, I don't know what the situation is today, was a pretty violent country, and you actually carried your gun with you into church and thought, what if, when I'm in this environment, terrorists burst in and start shooting up the church? What should my reaction be? And you reacted instantaneously to that attack because you had sort of mentally trained for it. Why would you have even thought that that would be something that you needed to do?
Gary, the country was going through a really tough time. We were basically going through a revolution with communists attacking the government of the time, and we had all the terrible apartheid laws, and we had a lot of turmoil, political turmoil in the country. And I'd also been in the military for 2 years. We had a 2-year military service that we had to do. And so during that time, having got the experience there, one started to try and think ahead for various scenarios. And I used to travel with one of my colleagues in the Defense Force, and he would always say to me, while we were driving through the hills in the countryside, he'd say, where would you put your light machine gun? Where would you have your troops going through if there was an attack over here? And so one started to start thinking ahead, and this was just really interesting. Every time we went into shopping centers, everybody's bags would check. You went through metal detectors. So we were living in a very closed, tight kind of society with many attacks that had taken place before the St. James Massacre. Many terrorist attacks took place after the St. James Massacre. So we were a very aware nation, with all the chaos that was going on around us.
And what was really interesting when I look back on this, and I, of course, remember the St. James Massacre, but I don't remember the aftermath of it because I'm in the United States and we didn't see this coverage here. There were those who heralded you, Charl Van Wyk, as a hero, and there were those who vilified you because they believed that you ought not to be carrying a gun with you into a house of worship.
That's right. It was pretty interesting. Many people thought this was great. And in fact, it's really funny listening to some radio shows in South Africa where people are vilifying me, and then somebody that was in the attack in the church will phone in and say, I was there when it happened, and I was very happy to have Charl sitting in the church with us. So it gives a different perspective if you're there. The other issue was Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who criticized me in the press about 2 days later, saying that, we shouldn't use the same evil weapons as these people, and he said that vengeance is mine, said the Lord. I wasn't taking revenge. I was involved in self-defense. Revenge would have been if I had followed the attackers, tried to catch them the next day, and then executed them myself, which I didn't do. I left that up to the authorities to deal with them as far as justice is concerned. So yes, there was a lot of criticism, and there were a lot of people that thought what I did was the right thing.
Well, I very much respect Archbishop Desmond Tutu for on another number of levels, but I wonder how he would have felt had he been in a church preaching, and the church came under attack, and somebody pulled a gun and shot his attacker and saved his life. Would he then go to that attacker and say, "My son, you shouldn't have done that. It would have been better had the person shot me"? I don't think so.
Yes, I suppose it's all a matter of perspective.
It most certainly is. The reason, besides the fact that I find the book very fascinating, and the issue is obviously a very interesting one to discuss, that I feel that it's important for us to talk about this today is because in many areas of the world, people actually have to make these kinds of decisions because it is unsafe because of either criminal activity or, as in the case of the attack on the St. James Cathedral, terrorists who believe that through violence they can impose their will upon others. This does happen on a daily basis around the world. And so people have to make judgment calls, I think, and it's an individual call, how they're going to go about their life. Are they going to take steps to defend themselves should they come under attack? Or are they going to crawl into the corner and hope to become invisible to one's attacker? Obviously, when people are opening up with automatic weapons and throwing grenades, as in the case of the St. James Cathedral massacre, or when we have the unfortunate incidents, as we do today, of suicide bombers, one does not have the opportunity to just fade away and retreat from an attack. Because they are trapped in that kind of a situation.
That's right. I'm a missionary, and I work up in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Zambia and other countries, also in South Africa. And in the Congo, my pastor friends have had colleagues buried alive, and evangelists have been cut up in pieces in that country, and the Congo is a gun-free zone. I always say to them, if your congregation was armed, the pastors could not have been buried alive. They would have just stood there and told the rebel, to take a hike. And so I see this sort of thing in my daily experience. Rwanda was another gun-free zone. You see it in China and also in Uganda, Cambodia, all these various areas that are gun-free zones. And it's just incredible how many people can be murdered in them. But you don't have mass murders taking place in police stations or in shooting ranges or in gun shops where there are lots of firearms around. People go for the areas which are gun-free zones where nobody's going to retaliate, and that's why areas like the schools in America and schools in Europe are attacked by these people. In fact, the leader, the commander of the troops that attacked our church, said to me, because I've met them afterwards and I've been reaching out to them, he said to me, "There we thought that the St. James Church was a gun-free zone, and boy, did you have a surprise for us."
Yes, in fact, the most amazing part of your book, in my opinion, was not the story about how you protected yourself and your fellow congregants, but the most amazing encounter that you had with the very person who you shot